Welcome back to the realm. Today we're going to continue with imperialism. We're going to look at section 4, which is British imperialism in India, one of the more influential places where the British actually benefited greatly from the resources and the work that the people in India provided. So we'll take a look at how the British expanded their control over India through the East India Company that really dominated control in India. The British East India Company ruled India until about the 1850s. The company had its own army, which was led by British officers, and the army actually there was also staffed by Indian troops. These Indian troops were known as sepoys. These are Indian soldiers that served in the British Army. Here is what a sepoy looked like in uniform right here. So rather blue, they had the red hats with the red shoulders. And so these were very official troops that fought on the side of the British, but were native to India. Now, the British called India the jewel in the crown. India was Britain's most valuable colony. Its population was actually forced to produce raw materials that the British used for manufacturing back in England in the textile factories and others. Now, the people were also forced to then buy British manufactured goods. So this is very similar to what the British were trying to do in the American colonies as well. The British transported a lot of trade goods. They began using railroads to move cash crops and goods much faster across Asia and back into Europe. And the impact of colonialism here was huge. The British hold very much of the power and political and economic sway in India during this time. Cash crop production resulted, though, in the loss of self-sufficiency in India and actually led to famine. And the reason for this is, like in Africa, where you had people growing food-based crops for subsistence, and then you make those fields and you turn them into cotton or other fields for cash crops, then that leads to shortage of food and could eventually lead to famine, especially in a highly populated region such as India. Now, Indian life was disrupted by Christian missionaries and also the European racist attitudes. They really saw themselves as being superior to other races. Now, the British modernized India's economy, though, and did improve public health overall. We do want to take a look at a key map here about how the European countries control different parts of Asia. This map shows you the impact that the British had. They control all of India, parts of Burma here as well, and then even into some of the Malay states, Brunei and North Borneo. And then you can see that the Netherlands in yellow is involved in here. The United States had control of the Philippines at this time. The French here in the light purple, what is modern day Vietnam, and Germany also in the darker yellow over here. So you can see that the Western empires were moving into Asia around 1910. Okay, we're going to talk about a rebellion, though, that took place in India by the sepoys, and this is called the Sepoy Mutiny. This was an Indian rebellion. The sepoys actually refused to use cartridges of new rifles for religious reasons. The cartridges were actually greased with beef and pork fat. Now, if you know anything about the religion of this area, the cow in India, according to the Hindu religion, is a sacred being. And also the Muslims, they do not eat pork. So in order to open the new cartridge or clip, you had to bite off a piece of lard. And many sepoys were jailed because they refused to do this, while others began a rebellion. This rebellion became known as the Sepoy Mutiny. This is where Indian soldiers rebelled against the British Army. Many Indian people, especially though the Sikhs, remained loyal to the British during this war. I want to show you a key slide here about why the sepoys rebelled. Okay, so as you can see here, this is what the cartridge looked like right here. You can see that there's at the bottom there's this grease that helps the bullet slide through. There's a paper casing, there's powder, and this all goes into the gun. So you have to bite off that piece of lard. So for these sepoys, this was going against their religious belief because the grease was rumored to be derived from beef and pork, which is true. And then what you do is you'd have to bite that off, pour it down the barrel of the gun, and then you'd have to pack it down with the ramrod. And so this is really the big reason that led to the Sepoy Mutiny in 1857. Okay, the turning point, though, in all of this is that the British put down this rebellion and they then took direct control of India. This is where they move in and use their people to control India. And they called this time period and this control the Raj. The Raj is the term used for the British rule in India from 1757 to 1947. Uprisings increased, and the distrust between the British and the Indians also began to fester. Nationalism, in response to some of these rebellions, started to surface in India. There were many calls for reform. In the 1800s, Ram Mohan Roy led a modernization movement in India. Many Indians adopted Western ways of life and also called for social reforms. Indians, though, resented being considered second-class citizens in their own country, and therefore nationalist groups formed. Indian National Congress and Muslim League were formed. Nationalists were angered at the British by the partition of Bengal. Bengal was a major province. The British had divided the very large province into a Hindu section and a Muslim section, but pressure from the people in India forced the British to rethink this division. So overall, what you're looking at here, how the British controlled India in a direct fashion, the Sepoy Mutiny and why it took place, and then because of mutinies, rebellions, revolts, how nationalism or pride in the Indian culture and nation began to develop. Once you have nationalism setting in, the next step is usually a major rebellion and a movement for independence.